world of coaching evolving and the carousel always changing, we're going to sit down with some coaches and we're going to figure out what they coach, how they coach, and most importantly, why they got into this profession. My name is Kason Wilkinson, and I am your host of the Coaches Why podcast.
That's a great question.
That was my Coaches Why.
Absolutely, man. Talk some cross country, and I know. Actually, we'll get into that. Yeah, that's fine because it says distance track as well. But I was like, I don't think you guys have a track team, but I think
we do, but we don't. Yeah.
Okay, so you have a track team, but you, actually explain that.
So we have, so we do distance track. So under the umbrella cross country, like I use my budget from cross country during the spring. So we're only allowed to race in the 800 meters and up. So we're not a sanctioned track and field program where we could have sprinters and throwers and jumpers. But having a distance track team using my budget in the fall allows us to have a spring season.
I see. Okay, so that is really unique. I guess I didn't even think of that, but I guess that does also make sense, right? Like, yeah, you can travel and go do something in the springtime and keep them busy.
Exactly.
So, fair point. Okay, I like that.
And that's huge for us because in reality, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk more about it, but in reality, our goal is to get our kids somewhere else after. And a lot of coaches pay attention more to track times because there's no short track, long track. There's all the same track, right? Unlike in cross country, you have a short course, long course, etc. Coaches actually pay attention more to track times and cross country times for recruiting.
I see. Okay, that's really good to know. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if you know this or not, but I actually coach at a 2-year school as well. I coach at a JUCO in Oklahoma.
Yep.
And so, okay, yeah, cool. I just want to make sure. I don't know. Some people read, some people don't. Some people, see that they just see a podcast and want to jump on. So, I don't know all the research or information. But anyways, yeah, the idea of getting them to the next level and having them continue to go is, obviously a goal, as you said. And so, you say the idea of them, the track times is more kind of widely paid attention to because of the commonality, right? Like they all be in the same distance and stuff like that. When it comes to, which, like you said, we will get into it a little bit more, but since we're already on the topic, like the cross-country courses, right, and that there's so many variables that go into, maybe they may all be the same distance, but elevations and some of those variables that go into just the differences of track, of the course, I should say. Mm-hmm. When it comes to like those coaches or maybe just like decision-making of how these courses are kind of, I wouldn't say displayed, but kind of laid out, I guess, right? How do most track coordinators or say cross country coordinators lay out these courses, and how do they decide what's the best in terms of for that event?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone that hosts a cross country meet has the right intention to have a good course for the athletes. It's just one of those things, though, is sometimes coaches do their measurements by GPS. And GPSs aren't usually on point, or a coach will, wheel the course, but the wheel will be down the middle instead of the inside of the course. So that's when you get your short courses as well. So it's tough. There's a lot of variables, and you got to be really picky and exact on how to measure a course for it to be an exact 8K course, an exact 5K course. And it's honestly gotten to a point where I think we go to one course a year. That's an exact measurement of what we need to race. Because even nationals, at the national championship, it was long.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, long by a lot. So it's just, it is what it is. It's really hard to really, because for example, our first cross country meet, we ended up being in a really, really short course, but our times looked amazing. And when coaches realized how short the course was, they were not interested in the times that we ran that course. And that's the issue that we have, with the different variables of the different courses. Unlike in track, like I have a kid right now that just ran a 150 in the 800. You can't, there's no such thing,
Yeah, outside of the wind variants which
Correct.
I don't know actually. Actually, this is maybe you can verify this or not. I ran track growing up for a little while as well, and I remember as time went on, I remember them being like +1s or plus or negatives or whatever the case is, I guess, and I think that became like a wind variant in terms of
for sprints.
For sprinters. Okay, I was gonna say, does that count towards? Do they do the same thing for distance runners?
It's only for the 100 and the 200.
I see. And is that because, in distance, because you're running the full track, this part of the track, you obviously you're away from it, and then this one you're going into it, right?
Correct. So you get the counter, you counter with each other. So even the 400-meter sprint, right? Because you're running a whole lap around, you get the wind behind you and you fight against the wind, so they don't really count it.
I see.
Okay. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And the cross country nationals, right, was snow, which I'm assuming you guys I'm assuming you guys went to that. So I'm sure that was a fun time, especially being from Nevada, Southern Nevada at that was probably a fun experience.
It was interesting. We definitely if you ask our athletes right now, it's one of those like I'll never forget moments. Because that was the first time that most of our athletes even saw snow.
Yeah.
So it was a difficult day for us performance wise. But in the end, the experience was awesome. So
absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to get into this episode with you guys and guys. Unique start. I don't think we've ever started with like just starting the episode with talking about the sport, and so hopefully you guys like that one. Today we have Coach Bryan Astudillo joining us from College of Southern Nevada. He is the head men's and women's cross country and distance track coach there. And so, Coach, I appreciate you joining the show. So I appreciate that so much.
Appreciate you having me. It's awesome.
Yeah, man, absolutely, and super excited to have this and talk a little bit about track and everything. And so to get started, I always like to get started with just kind of speaking about you and kind of, your childhood, I guess. So, where'd you grow up and where did you or when did you get involved with maybe all sports, but, maybe track and field and or cross country?
Yeah. So I was originally born in New York, Brooklyn. Was there until I was about 9 years old, and then I made the move to Miami. So that's when I really got into sports, and as a 9-10-year-old, started doing the whole little league baseball and basketball. And I was one of those really tall kids at that age, so I don't think I've grown since I was 12. So basketball was my main sport really at that age, because I was a 6-foot 12-year-old.
Wow. Okay.
So really got into athletics while I was in Miami. Got into high school, and football and basketball were my main sports to begin with. Played tight end for the football team, and I was playing basketball as a starter. Then around junior year, I actually got into cross country and track because my girlfriend at the time was also a cross country and track runner. So it was one of those opportunities to just be with her a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
Knew nothing about the sport. I just knew track meant running and whatnot. But I actually joined the track team, and I was a thrower. I threw the shot put and the discus throughout my high school career. Made some really cool history at my high school. Became the first thrower to make it to the regional championship in Miami for our school. First thrower ever to get a scholarship out of our high school. And this is the cool one. I'm the first thrower ever to be signed to the Nova Southeastern University. So I did compete at the Division II level for shot put and discus.
That's cool, bro. Heck yeah. So you made some history, and so you grew up you were born in New York, moved to Miami, and got into it because of your girlfriend, and at the time, of course. And
don't tell my wife that though. That's
yeah, but yeah, I got you. Absolutely, yeah. It's your secret's safe with us and with me. Yeah, for sure. So no, that's cool though, And so you made history, and so you said that you went to Nova Southeast University, correct?
Yep, Fort Lauderdale.
for sure. So what made you decide to sign with them, right? Like was what, thinking back to that time frame and thinking back to like maybe your recruiting process or whatever process you had, what stood out about them and why did you choose to go that route?
It was honestly one of those situations where, I graduated at a young age. So I graduated when I was 17. And it was one of those opportunities to continue doing what I fell in love with, because I fell in love with the sport and fell in love with shot put and discus, to compete at the next level. And I think the most important thing with me, because I am Colombian, so we have that Colombian culture of families, everything. It was only a 45-minute drive from home. So, my scholarship, I ended up staying on campus, but it was one of those things where if I really wanted to see mom, I would just get in my car real fast and spend the weekend with her. And honestly, the idea of me being that first really intrigued me and really made me proud of how hard I worked throughout my high school career to get to that point. So those were the two main variables, the being the first at that university and just being so close at home and being able to go home pretty much whenever I wanted.
Yeah, no, I think that's a big thing, and I'm sure we may get into that as we go as well. But I think that's always a nice thing, or maybe something that maybe I wouldn't say challenges you, because we'll get into like the recruiting side of things. But I think like on the side of like, that's something that as a coach, right, when you get recruiting, you may have to overcome that, in terms of like you might have a kid from Texas who's really good, but doesn't really want to go that far away, right, and like not trying to necessarily persuade them to go there, right? But it's more of like supporting them through the process of whatever their decision is, right? Obviously, selfishly, we want them to come to our school, but at the same time, understanding that for some people, family is more important than the college experience of far away, right? And so I can understand how that's such a big thing. So you were a discus and shot putter. I was that as well, just in high school, right? And so I don't know. I did a lot of sports growing up, so I tried to just throw little things in there that I did a little bit. Not saying I was really amazing at anything in that regard, but I always like to say that that's cool. You did that at the high level. So when did you? So after you were at school, right, and you went to this school, when did you decide that coaching is what you wanted to do? Like, was it a when you were there and you knew this is a sport you wanted to be around for a long time? Was there kind of something that you took some time away and went back to coaching? Like, what was that experience and decision making like?
So it was one of those situations where, and if we're going to speak honestly, it was one of those opportunities that I had at that school that I absolutely did not take advantage of. Again, now that I'm older, I look back, me being young, me living on my own, having my own dorm room, at such a young age, I really thought that was the cool thing about being a college student is I live on my own. I get to do whatever I want. And part of the doing whatever I wanted at the time was, not going to class, not doing homework and all that crazy stuff that I'm against now when I talk to my athletes. So I decided to go back home and finish and continue my educational career back in Miami. And when I moved back, my high school coach, who is someone that, I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about today, is really the main person that got me into the passion of cross country and track and field. He was a really good mentor while I was an athlete. But when I got back, he really put me under his wing, and he's the one that reached out and he was like, hey, during track season, I need a throwers coach. Would you be interested? Right. And then obviously, absolutely, whatever you need. His name's Ryan Raposo. And I just call him Raposo. So whatever you need, Raposo, like, let me know what I need to do. And then about a couple of weeks later, he actually called me and he said, hey, actually, we have about 160 cross country runners this fall. Might need another body. Are you willing to come out and help me out as well with cross country? And then I knew a little bit about cross country at that time because, again, my girlfriend at the time was a distance runner. So, following her, I got to know a little bit, but nowhere to the knowledge where, to be an assistant coach or anything. But he insisted that, I will teach you everything I know. We will go to workshops together. I will put you in a situation where you can make a decision, and then we sit down and say, was that the right decision? Why did you choose it? Really, really became that huge mentor that I needed, especially at that time, leaving my university and, being on the low a little bit because of the situation. And being around him every day just made me appreciate the sport and made me love the sport and made me love the idea of I can absolutely do this for a living.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having those coaches, we all learn from them in our own ways, right? We have good coaches, we have bad coaches. Not everybody has a bad coach, but you really get to kind of experience, especially when you have a coach who takes you under the wing, like you're mentioning. It really makes the experience not only as an athlete so much better, but also in your case, right, going back to coach, who's willing to not only feed into the athletes, but also feed into his assistants, I think is huge, right? Like he wants everybody to find and flourish. Essentially, is amazing feeling. And so we definitely will talk about Raposo here in just a little bit. But you also said something about whenever you first went to school, you were 17. I graduated 17, so I also understand that experience as well. But you mentioned how at 17, you're preaching essentially some different things to your athletes now than you did than whenever you were in college. So what I'm getting to is, now that you're a coach and you may have these kids who come to your university or to your school, and, you say you preach these things. So I guess what I'm getting to is, how do you coach or what do you say to an athlete who may be doing some of the same things that you did, right? You're speaking about your experiences to these kids. I would assume at some point a little bit, maybe you are avoiding kids who may have some of the same not character, but some of the red flags, I guess, that because you went through it, right? So in general, how do you coach a kid through maybe once you start noticing that they're doing some of the same things that you did when you first went to school?
Yeah, so I'm very transparent about my history when I was an athlete. The way that we're having this conversation, the way that we talk is the same way I talk with my athletes, and I'm very open and very transparent with them. So, especially when the incoming freshmen first come in and we have our first team meeting, I mention my history. I tell them what I went through, and I show them, what could have been and what actually was. And if it's, as an example, if it's something that they really don't want to follow, this is where I went wrong. Let's avoid that. And the cool thing about here at CSN is that when we do start seeing athletes, starting to struggle a little bit and kind of not going the route where we need them to go in order to not only graduate, because they come to CSN to graduate. That's the first and foremost, right? And then our goal, and I always tell my recruits, my job isn't done until I see you get your bachelor's at your next school. So the cool thing about here at CSN is that we have a lot of resources for student athletes where if they are struggling, they have my cell phone number. They do have, they know where my office is. It's door open policy. We can talk about whatever, and we sit down and we talk, what's going on? Why are you struggling? This is what, I went through that too. This is what happened to me, and this is kind of what I did, the good, the bad, and kind of relate to them on a one-on-one level, like not only as their coach, but kind of talking to them as a low-key peer, right?
Right.
And then if they are struggling academically, we have a great academic advisor here at the College of Southern Nevada where, she reaches out all the time, does grade checks, makes sure that, that athletes are staying on point. If an athlete does need help, we have study hall where athletes could go in and do their study hall hours. And I personally do grade checks every 2 weeks as well at practice to just make sure that we're on point. And if I do see a grade that's not so great, I pull them aside after practice and we literally talk about why they think they have the grade that they have. And I think I've been very lucky, and I think it's because of the way that I address myself and my situation that my athletes are pretty honest with me about what's going on. So they'll tell me, yeah, I just didn't do the homework, or I failed the exam. I don't think I studied enough. And then we sit down and come up with a game plan. All right, if you didn't study enough, how can we do how can we improve our time management where you will have more time to study? How are you studying? Hey, you know what? When I was a student, this is what I did to study, and this was very successful for me. And I think it also helps that currently I'm in school as well, trying to get my PhD. And they see that, so that, I kind of tell them that, hey, if I'm coaching you guys and still doing 10-page papers every week, we could give the same energy back, and let's do it together.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's a great point. Whenever they see that you're doing through it, I think that you're right. Like that does help with like influential and maybe show like I don't have an excuse, right? And like you mentioned, the resources on campus do matter. And I'm assuming not only when they get there, but that's something you probably speak highly of when you're recruiting a kid too. Is like this is kind of some of the things that we prioritize, more than just being an athlete, is we want you to go to the next level, and we want you to continue to get your education in whatever regards that may be. And so you also mentioned, because there's a few things I want to talk about in that level, but I think that's going to play a little bit more factor into the recruiting, maybe like the a little bit of a different section a little bit later. But I do want to go back to Coach Raposo because I know we're going to get farther away from him if I don't go back and talk about him now. But you said that he was a pretty influential person in your not only athletic career, but it sounds like in your coaching career too. So what did he teach you in terms of, maybe, I don't know. I guess there's a lot of variables to that. So I guess we know who he is, but what did he teach you as you went back into the coaching game, as you adjusted to that world?
I mean, honestly, he taught me a lot about life in general, right? The first thing that he told me when I came back, and this is something I'll never forget, is life isn't over. Life is, especially life for you, is just beginning. He just was very, how can I explain it, man? He was very understanding, and that was, and I think that was the biggest thing, is that coming back home after not being so successful at the university, I wasn't really getting that support at home, because I did, unfortunately, disappoint them. So I was coming back with a little bit of some negative energy at home, and understandably so, right? Like I didn't do my part. He was the first one to like, hey, it's okay. Like things happen. Life is just starting. Learn what you did, the good, the bad. And with those experiences, make sure that you incorporate them in your future life decisions. So being around him and seeing how he interacted, because he was a teacher as well at the high school, seeing how he interacted with the students and seeing how he interacted with the team, it was one of those things that I was like, I could be that guy, and I could influence the kind of people that he's influencing right now in my lifetime. And it was it also became one of those things that I ended up, he graduated from psychology. I went ahead and graduated from psychology. So we had a lot of, we started getting a lot of conversations back and forth now, because obviously we both majored in the same thing. And he was a huge help for me when I was graduating from psychology, even to the fact that he flew to Vegas to see me graduate with my degree, which was pretty awesome to have him right next to me. He was just a major influence in life. And I know you asked specifically about coaching. And obviously coaching is a big part of my life now and in the future. But I think what he did to me and for me is a lot more than just, influencing me in the coaching world. He's a big reason why I went ahead and changed my life a little bit and started really seeing the positive outcomes of, if I do my part, the life is going to be pretty awesome. And I wouldn't be anywhere where I am right now, period, if it isn't for Ryan Raposo.
It's crazy to think sometimes, man, like how you said you came over to some negative energy, just because, like you said, you didn't do your part right while your time frame, and like life happens, whether it's a maturity thing at the time, whether it's just our bodies, whatever it is, right? There's a lot of variables that go into why people don't finish, and we're not going to necessarily dive into that. But I'm getting to the fact that, like, it's crazy to think that maybe some family maybe had this resentment or maybe this disappointment in you, but coach, that was your high school coach, and he was your positive source of energy during that time. He kept you going. And so it's really cool to think back, because I know I have a coach or two that were that same way with me, and I'm sure there's other people who've had that type of interaction with the coach. So it's really cool that the high school coach, whose job is solely to technically on paper, right, is to help you through your season academically and help you to become a better athlete. But when it carries over to 2, 3, 4, 5 years after high school, and more than that, right, deeper into life, it's really cool to know that he or she was almost more important to your mental or physical or whatever it may be when things went south than whenever things were good in high school, right? And it's cool that they have your support, or you have their support, during that. So it's really cool. I don't know, just in terms of thought process, to think about the fact that coaches end up being so much more for so much longer than what the technically on paper intention is, right? And especially somebody who, I'm assuming he was that way with a lot of people, but for people who actually put in the effort, not only on the track or field or whatever it may be, but also who put in the work to keep that relationship going with him, right, over time, like I'm assuming you did with him. It's an outstanding feeling in that regard. So it sounds like you've taken a lot from him on a personal side too, and so when it comes to like the athletic side of things, when it comes to the things that you've learned from him, what do you think are some of the biggest things that you've implemented in your program, maybe on the mental or personal side, because of what you've learned from Coach Raposo? And then also, maybe if you remember, maybe there is some things, what did you take from him on like the schematic or practice side of things, maybe on the actual athletic side, that you've implemented as well from that coach?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that he's taught me, from my experience as his athlete, and we still talk every week, because he's currently an athletic director now at a university in South Florida. Culture is everything. The culture that you bring into your program means everything. And with him, when as an athlete, our track teams were 220, 230 kids on the roster. And it was really just him and maybe one other person coaching the team. But the culture that he brought into the team, the culture of we got each other's back. It's not an individual, all for one, the whole.
Yeah.
Right.
One for all for one.
Yeah. He really brought that mentality into the program. And the biggest thing that I take now, that I learned from him when he was coaching me, was that consistency. Right. We want to get better. We want to be better in life, better in the sport. You need to be there. That's the easiest first step to do, is attendance. Be at every practice, be at every function. Mm-hmm. Work hard when you're there. Quality over quantity. That is stuff that has been imprinted into my mind, even from back then, and I really try to put that into my program. And the biggest thing that one of the bigger things that I really took from him as a coach, that I'm trying and I'm hoping I'm being successful in my program, is the caring about the program, caring about the people, showing them that you care for them to succeed. One example that I will never forget is my senior year. I needed to be a little bit in better shape, a little bit more explosive for my throws. So I would go ahead and do some sprints before or after practice on my own accord. And there was one day that it was really windy, really hard to run, but I'm still dedicated, still wanting to do my sprints, but I was struggling. He stayed, got to the line next to me, and ran with me. That's something that will always be in my mind, in my memories, and that's the perfect example of someone that isn't really there for the paycheck, someone that really isn't there honestly for the W's, He looked at me. He saw me struggling. He knew that I was working really hard to get myself better. By getting myself better, getting the team better. Because he could have just been out there with me, go Bryan, cheering me on and all that great stuff. But he put his stuff down on the grass, lined up next to me, and was running with me every single sprint. And that's something that will always be in my memory.
Yeah.
Culture and track, which we'll get into the culture questions towards the end. So I'm not going to dive into that crazy, but, I guess just off conversation pieces, track is one of those where, like you've mentioned, you had 200 plus kids on that team. And regardless of the amount of coaches you have, I feel like track's one of those sports that it can be really difficult to build a culture. And so whenever you have a coach and coaches, I should say, because like you said, it was more than just him, even though it might have only been one. there was the coaches, building a culture and track, I feel like can be hard because, as you know, and as we know, it's such an individual sport, right? And there's times where, like, as throwers, you don't see a sprinter or a distance runner during practice. You might do team warm-ups at the beginning, and you don't see them for an hour and a half, 2 hours until everybody's walking off the track. And then even distance runners, they may see them during warm-ups, and then they go take off and do their X amount of running, and it's only the sprinters up there, right? And whatever the programming was for that coach and that program, but in general, I feel like it can be really difficult to build that. So I don't know. It's interesting to think about the mere size of a team, and whenever you have, when you get to that event and you have throwers having some distance runners and some pole vaulters and whoever else is over there watching you throw, and then at the end of the event, right, the 4x4 I think is the last event of the high school track meet normally, maybe even college, but I know it's normally the last one of high school. At least it was whenever I was there. When you have everybody from different events coming to support and yelling at running up and down the football field or whatever, supporting it. It's really cool to see. And I think that kind of goes to show if you have a good culture, maybe not per se, but it does show a high level of support within the team when you see that support coming.
Yeah, and he did a great job with that, because I remember very clearly that no one would leave the track meets early during my high school days. I would be done within the first hour and a half, 2 hours of the meet, and I would stay to watch all the sprints, all the distance, and all the other events, and then staying for that 4x4. Because let me tell you, these 4x4 races in Miami were no joke either. They were great to watch. And the cool thing that he would do too for anyone that wanted to listen, and it turned out that a lot of people wanted to listen, is he would be in the bottom of the bleacher, kind of explaining out loud what was going on, what to look for, what he wanted from our athletes to do. And I mean, you had a whole group of people behind him, just listening to him, learning from him. And by the end of the season, no matter if you were a thrower or a pole vaulter, you knew a little bit about distance, you knew a little bit about sprints, you knew a little bit about throws. And it was great to be around. That's those years in high school while I was on that track program. It's nothing I will ever forget. And it's kind of the memories that I have from that I have a 18-year-old right now that's competing D1 at SUU for track, that I kind of just talk to him about and tell him how important it is to be there for their teammates. And he's one of those too that, yeah, he's only thrown, but he knows a little bit about distance. He knows about sprints. He knows about, all that stuff. And he likes to hang around and watch the races too. And it's kind of, Raposo, Bryan, Mason. So that's been
awesome.
pretty fun to be part of as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think back to that time, right? And track is such a social sport, right? Like I remember when I was there, I was spending time, I'll be honest, I hated some dudes from on opposing football teams because of how we acted and interacted in football, right? There was a lot of beef between us in terms of just football field stuff. And then I got to know them in track, and I was like, you know what? These guys are actually really cool as people. Just on the field, we didn't like each other, right? And, we started hanging out with each other. And long story short, like I remember I spoke about this coach and with other coaches who were around my area at one point. But anyways, my track coach was sounds a lot like Coach Raposo. He was at every single event he could be at. He was running around like a chicken with his head cut off, but he was supporting everywhere. He'd go, he'd come watch a throw or two, and then he'd run down a pole vault or discus, and he just makes circles every event, right? And trying to be there for everybody. And it was really cool because, my senior year, we ended up winning a state championship. We're the only men's team to win a state championship at my high school. And it was really cool because you mentioned in like 4x4, which obviously I will say we are New Mexico. We were really fast for New Mexico. I don't know where everybody stuck up against, probably nowhere near Texas numbers or Florida numbers, right? Because obviously you grew up in Florida, which we'll get to, is debatably the best state for track and field in terms of sprinters, kind of everything. I know distance, there's going to be an argument, which we'll get to, but I know like explosion sprinters and throws and all that, Florida's one of the toughest. So I will say,
don't let Texas hear you now. Don't let Texas hear you. They'll have something to say about that.
They will. I know. It's a debate. Yeah, for sure. Florida is a top 2 or 3. We'll say that. They're in the top 3 in the country in most events. And so but it was really cool that coach kind of was able to build that. And I remember the long hot dang days, especially as you get into April and everything. And yeah, you're right. It is important that the kids can feel that, especially in such an individual and really truly, no pun intended, distant sport. It's you're all over. So sounds like he did a really good job. And so for you, right, as you get into coaching, kind of a two-parter here is, what is your timeline like as a coach, right? So like, I know you went back to your high school and you coached there for a little bit, but I'm curious to know how you got from Florida, essentially when you went back home, to Southern Nevada. And then along with that, actually, no, we'll start there because I want to hear this, and then I'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges you faced.
Yeah, I mean, my route was really weird in the sense of, to get where I am right now, it really ended up being a lot of luck for my opportunity that I have right now. But yeah, so I went back to Miami, went with Raposo, coached with him for a few years, learned a lot from him, and we did some really cool things there, some really fun results at the state level and whatnot. Then I ended up moving to Las Vegas, and I stopped coaching just because, in my mind, it's time to be an adult. I need to get a job and, start thinking about a family and providing for a family eventually and whatnot. So as time went by, I missed the sport tremendously. I got the opportunity to work at a school as a teacher, for a first-year teacher. And when I got hired at that school, they already had a high school coach in place, but they had no middle school program. So I asked if I could start a cross-country track program for the middle school, because it was a K through 12 school. So I asked if I could start the program, and I got the green light. So I started the middle school elementary program for cross-country track at that school. Very successful. We did really well. The kids enjoyed it. At that level, it was just me trying to get the kids to learn the sport, enjoy the sport, love the sport. So when they do go to the high school level, that's when it starts becoming more tactical and a little bit more strict on what kind of things to do to be successful, right? But we were pretty good. A lot of the top runners here in Vegas during their high school careers were on my middle school team. And then COVID hit. So when COVID hit, we went ahead and stayed as a club, still traveled as a club, pretty successful as a club. And then I emailed the athletic director at the time here at CSN about having a team. I pretty much reached out asking if he had any idea if a cross-country program was going to be in play anytime soon. Pleaded that this city really needed a program to kind of lean on, because right now we do have UNLV, but UNLV is an all-women sport, so no men participants. So it was a plea of, please consider having a program started soon at CSN. This city really needs it. he responded saying, we do have a plan in play. We'd love to hear your ideas. Let's meet. So I went to one of the baseball games for CSN, sat down while watching the game. He kind of asked me what kind of ideas I would have, what kind of, what plans should be made for the program to really help the community. And I was transparent, gave him my 2 cents about, why we need a program. And then he looks at me and he's like, okay, do you want the gig? So obviously, I had to take a step back because I literally went into that conversation just as a quote unquote advisor on why Las Vegas needs a program.
Concerned community member.
Exactly. With no intention or any hope or thought of potentially being the guy that they would give the job to. But he took a big chance on me and gave me the opportunity to become the inaugural coach here for cross country. And that's where I'm at. Yeah, that's where I'm at right now. So, it's been it was a weird way, right? Like athlete, a high school assistant, not coach for a few years, to middle school, to now
here college.
Yeah.
That's cool, bro. Yeah. I mean, it's cool whenever you have a unique story, in terms of ways of getting there. Not everything's the what's the right term? The cliche or the normal, I guess, way of getting to where you're at. And so it's really cool when people have unique stories and how they get there, and so you were the inaugural coach. So you said right after COVID. So I think this, like, your 4th or 5th year, I'm assuming, right?
This is my 5th year.
5th year. Okay. So it's your 5th year here. So what are some challenges that you faced? Obviously as an inaugural program, you've never coached college. You went from high school to middle school to club to now college, right? So you've seen a few different levels. I'm sure as an inaugural program, there was some ups and downs as well, just in that type of conversation too. So, long story short, outside of recruiting, kind of the non-recruiting side of things, what are some challenges what are some challenges that you have faced? There we go. As you've taken this role, and how have you overcome
them? So when I first started, I know you said non-recruiting, but recruiting was hard.
The biggest.
Just because we got approved officially April of the year back from COVID, and school ended in May. So I literally had a month and a half to try to get as many athletes that I could. So I ended up only with 8 total athletes my first year, both men and women. So that for sure was the biggest obstacle when we first started, just because we got approved so late into the year, and then COVID, and there was no state championships here because of COVID. They didn't want to do a state championship. So that was the biggest hurdle at first. For me, I would say training the 8K was at first a pretty big obstacle to overcome, just because I've never done it. I've felt really comfortable training the 5K. I've been around the 5K for many years. Me and Raposo would talk about the 5K for many years. So bumping up with the men to the 8K was a new obstacle for me. And one that definitely year one didn't get the best coach Bryan that they could have gotten, because I also was learning myself on how to go ahead and train the 8K. So that was one of the biggest things for sure. And as the years went by, the trial and error, the research, the talking to coaches, talking with Raposo, I've gotten to a point where I absolutely feel comfortable now being able to train someone successfully in the 8K. And I think the biggest thing that I do as well is it's not a my way or the highway type of program. Me and the team absolutely sit down all the time, and I look at them like, all right, talk to me, guys. What do you guys think? Where are we right now? What do you want to see? What do you think we should work on? And I think the fact that we collaborate between coach and athlete really has made me into a better coach, and has taught me a lot more on where I can improve myself as a coach, to then be the best that I can be, and bring this program as successful as we can.
That's huge. The getting together with your athletes and understanding where they are, I can see I can see that being a huge benefit, right? Like you seeing if how the athletes are responding to your coaching and or your programming and getting them. And I think that also helps with buy-in too, right? Like it helps with them feeling like they have a say. At the end of the day, it's your choice, but making them feel like they're part of something more than just if they succeed, right? Helping them understand how to have these type of conversations that may be hard for some. Some don't want to talk, I'm sure. Some are more vocal than others, and so having a safe space for them to speak their mind about ultimately their training and allowing them to grow is huge. And yeah, I'm sure the recruiting piece was very difficult. I know that was probably your biggest challenge. I knew that. I don't know. I can understand it being difficult, especially, but at the same time though, right? Like you said that UNLV was really the only program that was around for that offered distance or that type of event, and you said it was only women. So do you think that also played, even though it was a difficult thing, do you think that also played into your, or even maybe still plays into your advantage maybe in that regard, just because of the idea that there's no there's no men's program essentially?
So yes and no. So fast forward to now. I do have now another university that I have to compete with when it comes to recruiting, because now we have a Nevada State University that started athletics this year. So they started this year with men's track and field, and then starting next year, it looks like they will be put into the NAIA, where they'll have both men and women cross country, men and women track. So now it's another, and now that they have men, that's another obstacle that I need to go ahead and not really an obstacle, because I'm all about Vegas and the community. So it's one of those things that I've told recruits now that, let's say Nevada State is the end game. Let me help you get better so that you do end your way at Nevada State, and then me and the head coach have quite a bit conversations on local athletes and recruit and whatnot. But honestly, at first, even with only having UNLV as a program, it was difficult because of two things: the stigma, right? Because the stigma is still around of you're a JUCO. That means if I go to a JUCO, I wasn't good enough. And I don't want to be labeled as the athlete that wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
Right. And then we're not a scholarship program. I essentially run this program with walk-ons. We get no money for scholarship. We offer no scholarships, and we are essentially going against programs that have the capabilities of not only offering full tuition, but full housing, and have the capability of doing that with international students. Right. So it was a little tough at first trying to convince people to stay home, because one thing that I've noticed here about Las Vegas is a lot of kids do want to leave Las Vegas for college. So trying to overcome that obstacle to try to convince kids to stay home for a couple of years with no scholarship money, with no offers, again, essentially coming and staying home to be a walk-on on a JUCO program, was really hard to try to convince kids in the first 2-3 years. I really made a point at that time to just make our community aware that we exist and that we're here for the community. So what we would do is, go to all the cross country meets, go to all the track meets. They would see the athletes and me wear the CSN gear. Every year we volunteer over 1,000 hours for events and meets and whatnot, just to put our name out there and be successful, in the sense of, oh, okay, you know what? They're just not a little JUCO school, having a team. They're actually here for us and for the community. As time went on, I started, getting some athletes where now we weren't just getting athletes that, sure, I'll go to CSN because I guess I have no other choice. But we were starting to get athletes where they were like, you're my choice. I'm choosing CSN because I feel like I could get better and I could get a better opportunity after CSN than I am getting out of high school. So once I started getting those type of athletes with that mentality, our program completely has shifted now. And fortunately, we are at a point where I can go and talk to recruits and seriously talk to recruits about staying home for CSN because of the success that we've not only had on the courses and on the track, but just because of our reputation now within the community that, we are really here for the community and we really are here for Vegas.
Yeah. I think that, especially with the idea that like Vegas has the Raiders now, right? And, you've coached a team. I think last year I was reading that you guys, both men's and women's, were top 25 in the country. Whether you finished there or you got them there, whatever it was, but you guys were a top 25 team in the country regardless. I feel like those things are pretty sellable in the sense that, like, we're a top 25 team, and then now with, I know Vegas, everybody knows Vegas. So I feel like it's one of those things where you have a lot of, what's the right term? Outside sources, I guess, maybe not directed to CSN necessarily, outside of like what you're, outside of the variables or not the variables, resources and some of the things that you guys offer as a school itself, but outside of that, right, in terms of there's some things on the strip, you have these things, which I think at the same time it may play a factor, maybe helps out, because as a 2-year school you're getting kids who are 17, 18, 19, and you may not have to deal with the stresses of like that 21-year-old at the 4-year school who wants to go and experience the strip, right? And so that could be just me being naive, and I'm sure a good coach with culture doesn't have to deal with that necessarily so much. But I know there's probably some people that may fall into what the strip brings. Yeah, correct. That type of thing. So, when it comes to those things, outside of and I know the scholarships, the lacking of them does not help either. But do you use the fact that you were top 25, especially now? Or maybe the Vegas, is there areas of Vegas that you preach on outside of like the commonalities of what people know Vegas for to get kids to go there?
Yeah, so we fortunately, like you said, we've been nationally ranked, and we've actually been nationally ranked now. This is our 3rd year that we were nationally ranked in the polls with both men and women. The cool one this year was our men went all the way up to 10th in the polls, one
nice
poll release, which was pretty awesome to see, and we finished at national 17th. So as I said earlier, we're a little bit disappointed with the way we ended at nationals, but still top 20 in the nation, and there's we can't go wrong with that. So I definitely use the fact that we are nationally ranked when I do talk to recruits, but mainly I talk more about the improvement that the individual or the group of individuals made in their times instead of that national recognition. Because one thing that I've always, like, if people come up to me and say, man, you guys you're doing awesome as a coach, like you're a nationally ranked coach, I'm immediately going to deflect that and be like, I'm just a old guy screaming at kids. Like, they're the ones putting the work. They're the ones, putting the effort. I'm just here to watch. So I really highlight what our athletes have done while at CSN as that recruiting pitch to future CSN athletes. We'll put times on the screen where this was the before, this was the after. These were the offers they received at a high school. These were the offers they're receiving now. So that we can show them that if they and this is the biggest thing for us, our culture quote is trust the process. If we trust the process and use us as that bridge program, in the sense of, use us as a bridge to get those offers that you did not get out of high school. This is where we can come in and support you. This is where we have been successful to really open up some doors for athletes and really encourage them to continue pushing hard to get some exciting opportunities that they probably would have never thought. So that's the main recruiting pitch for that. And honestly, the whole Vegas thing, the Vegas life. So again, with the no scholarships, we really don't get out-of-state athletes. My roster is 100% local athletes. So the way that I try to convince our athletes to stay, compared to going out of state at a 4-year is, I tell them I understand you walk out the dorm, you have your whole life outside your dorm because everything's on campus. And I get that. That's the college experience, 100%. Um, but we have our own college experience here in our city where I tell them where you can go ahead and do some great safe activities that kind of make up for not having a dorm room and a campus, like a 4-year. We have some great hiking trails. We have amazing shows. We have great concerts. We have great events. Any corner that you go, there's what are those rooms called?
Like escape rooms.
Escape rooms, right?
Okay.
A bunch of movies. You could rent out a movie theater and have a great party in a movie theater with you and your friends. Like, there's a lot of stuff that you can do here in Vegas that kind of makes up for not being on campus at a 4-year, and a lot of things that you can do on the safe side.
Sure.
And fortunately, I've had a roster that, like, they get it and they understand that, they don't really need to be in that strip life to really enjoy Vegas. So that's been awesome. That's been a great pitch, and I've actually convinced people to stay because of that pitch, to run for us for a couple of years, and it's been a ride, man. I love it.
Absolutely, it sounds like it. You talked about the idea of, which as a 2-year coach as well, I understand that one of my biggest goals is to allow them, like you said, be that bridge, kind of be that trampoline to help them get to that next level, and I think that that's a big goal. Obviously, they're going to leave here with a degree too, like that's number one. But the idea of athletically helping them get those opportunities after here is a big goal of mine as well. But for you, fun fact, I don't think I've ever asked this question to any 2-year coach. I've had a few of them on here, so congrats, you're gonna be the first one to get it.
Let's go.
Yes, sir. I just thought of it, so we'll run with it. Where do you start with getting kids to that next level? Helping them with those opportunities that may come. And I know as track and distance and just running, there's marks and things like that that help with. They help with that. They help with that. They can look at tracks. They can look at your marks, like you said earlier. They prefer some things over others in terms of like distance and everything, and what courses you're on and everything. But in general, where do you start and how do you help with getting kids to that next level?
Yeah, I mean, the first step, honestly, is getting the athletes to understand the process that it takes to get from where they were in high school to where, get to a point where a 4-year will then start looking at them. And that's, the whole consistency, the consistent running, the organization that it takes to become a solid distance runner, the proper mileage, not undertraining, not overtraining, because there's a lot of emphasis sometimes that overtraining and running more miles is the way to go. So kind of teaching them the right path to what it takes to become a solid distance runner is the first thing that we do. And we start that all the way in the summer, right? They run as a team during the summer. They do their mileage, their base build up mileage in the summer. And they start understanding the how organized and consistent you need to be in order to get to a level. Fortunately, with that way of training, we have seen a lot of drops and a lot of great performances from athletes during CSN. So when it starts getting to a point where, okay, it's time to go ahead and look at the future, the first thing I do is give me a list of schools, give me a list of areas that you're interested in going, right? So each athlete will give me a list of schools, list of areas, and then we go ahead and sit down and I show them how to reach out to coaches, right? In our sport, most of the time we need to reach out to the coaches instead of the coaches reaching out to the athletes. So it's a nice little learning block on how to do that. When you do start talking to coaches, how often do you respond? How quickly do you respond? How do you speak to the coaches? This is not an 18-year-old buddy that you're talking to. This is a 4-year head coach that's looking to make a professional decision on if you're going to be professional enough to run for their program for the next 2 years. So we do a lot of I wouldn't say training, but a lot of informal training and conversation and sitting down and really getting to understand what that process would take for them to get to that next level. and then I tell them I'm their biggest agent. Like I'm their sports agent. Once they're talking to the coaches, I'm talking to the coaches, and I'm letting the coaches know and being transparent. These are the goods. These are the bads. Coach, like if you pick this athlete, you're going to get a great athlete, and most of the time, the athletes that do come to CSN are still pretty new to the sport, so their potential is still pretty high, and where they can eventually go. So it's a lot of teaching on consistency, a lot of communication. Communication's huge when it comes to knowing where they're going to go next between me and the athletes, and just perform. If you perform and get it in GPA. I mean, I don't know how many coaches their first. I know that's my first question, right? What is their GPA? So making sure that their grades and their academics are on point, where when they are talking to a coach, the GPA isn't a determining factor whether they're willing to take them in or not.
100% agree with that. Having the informal training, I think, is a very important thing, which you're already having that informal conversation and probably some, what do you want to call it? Maybe breaking down that wall, maybe out of high school too. Like you said earlier, a lot of kids think about that JUCO life and think about that as like I'm not good enough, but really it's just a segue to where they want to go. And so you've already kind of hopefully breaking that wall down out of high school, but now you're helping break that second wall down to help them once they're ready to go. And so I like the idea that you do the formal training, and I like that you sounds like a little bit like mine too. I'll sit them down and we'll talk the beginning of their sophomore year. We'll talk throughout their freshman year too, just kind of make sure and see what their thoughts are. But really going into that second year, really trying to talk about what the future looks like, right? And helping them sit down, do the whole regional thing, schools they were interested in, whatever. So I can appreciate you diving into that first time. So shout out to you for being so open for that one too, because I didn't know how I don't know, but it worked out. So that works great. Now, my final piece of this before we talk about philosophy, because we've talked a lot about recruiting, but I think one of the things that I want to talk about, since you've talked about performance and you've talked about getting the kids to, what's their, like you said, consistency, understanding overtraining, undertraining, things like that is part of that development of the kid as they enter CSN and as they kind of go throughout their 2 years here, is just naturally we all want them to develop, and that's our goal, is to develop them as athletes but also people. So I guess my question for you though is, especially now that you have more kids on your team, you don't have those same 8 that you had when you first started, is now you can take 5 to 7 kids to nationals, right? And I think like top 5 score. How do you get a kid, and maybe where do you start with development? Like, how do you get a kid to go from maybe they're the 6th or 7th or however many kids you have on your team to where they're not part of your main 5 essentially, right? They're not really point scoring right now, but that's their goal, right? So how do you get them to not only get there, which I know there's some variables, right? Their mentality, their buy-in, stuff like that. But in general, how do you get them to, where do you start with development, and how do you get them there?
I mean, summer is the biggest part of our season, right? We do a lot of base training and a lot of base mileage together as a team. And I think it starts there because we start getting that team aspect of cross country. Understanding, cross country could be individual. You're worried about your individual time, but during these runs in the summer is where that team aspect really shines, because we're not competing with each other. We're not trying to, run faster than our teammates right now in the summer. We're just building mileage as a team, and they go out and have their runs and their conversations and their goals. And then, we got to do this. Let's do it together. And it really becomes a unit we are a unit by the end of the summer. Then with the addition to the running that we do over the summer, we do incorporate a strength training program. My strength coach, Mike Smith, he owns his own gym called Titan Athletes. And the great thing about Mike Smith is he's also a high school head track coach. And his school is actually 3-time defending state champion right now in track. So we have a strength coach that absolutely knows our sport. So our strength training over the summer is really beneficial for us because we're getting training that's specific to running. And he does a good job incorporating strength training and injury prevention training as well. So by the time that we are done with our summer program, our base mileage, our strength training, we do a time trial, a 5K time trial with no speed training behind it. We're going in there and we're running a 5K just based off basic mileage. And based on those results, I individualize our training program where we will be separating kids into specific groups. That way we're not forcing too much physical activity on an athlete that is just not there yet. Right. So I think our students, our athletes do a really good job not taking it personal if I say, okay, hey, you're in group 3 right now. Right. I think they do a good job not taking it personal, but more of a challenge to, hey, like, if I want to be part of that top 7, then I think I might have to end up being in that group 2 in order to have a chance to do that. Now, the biggest key for me is I understand we want to move up groups and I understand we want to be a part of the top 7, but do not do more than we need to, right? Trust the process. If you trust the process and do what you need to do with what we're trying to encourage you to do, you will get to that point where you will be in that competition for a potential top 7 that will travel to regionals and nationals. Right. So, like, for example, this year, our men's team, we had a really deep and strong men's team. Our number 10, 11 guy this year would have been in our top 5 2 years ago. So it was also that communication with those athletes that, let's try to fight for that top 7. Absolutely. I'm all about competition, but we also have next year to think about because of the fact that we have sophomores that will be moving on and we will have freshmen that will receive offers that will leave after 1 year. So next man up, right? We have that mentality that once they leave, it has to be next man up. And that's when you'll have your opportunity to then compete for that top 7 and trusting the process of the 4 years of being a collegiate athlete.
For sure. Yeah. So I guess on a brief note, right, you're talking about this next man up and things like that. So as a coach, do you take, especially like early on, I know at the beginning of this, we talked about how you don't take them to a whole lot of cross country events at the beginning of the year, just because I know that you said that it can be a little bit difficult to, which I guess maybe I misunderstood this too. So if I did, then you can remind me or, feel free to correct me here, but I know you have some money that you spend to go in the spring, right, for the actual track events or whatever. So anyways, what I'm getting to is some coaches don't necessarily take their whole roster to these places, just so like that's like you said, let's say group 3, they're not really, some coaches may not take group 3 very many places, if any at all, just because for whether it's financial reasons or they just don't put as much effort into group 3 right now because group 1 and 2 are the ones producing. But in your opinion and in your thought process as a coach, how often are you getting group 3 essentially involved in, these events that group 1 and 2 are going to, whether it's fall or spring?
Yeah, great question. Honestly, and I'm not trying to sound, I guess, standoffish with this answer. In my mind, that group 1 and group 3, we're still all one, right? Yeah. So I don't pay attention less to group 3 because they're in group 3 instead of group 1.
For sure.
I try to take the whole team as many meets as I can in cross country. Yeah. Usually there will be one regular season meet which one of the top more meets of the regular season where I'll say, okay, I could only take top 7 for this one. And it does become one of those, not because I don't want to take the whole team, it's because it does become more of a budget thing where, if I do want to go to this competitive meet, but I also want to have a track season, I need to save some money in the fall. And unfortunately, I have to make those decisions because if it was up to me, I would take everybody on the team to every single competition. Just because the last person in group 3 is putting the same amount of effort as the person in group 1. And I love rewarding, the trusting the process, the effort and everything they put into the program. Just unfortunately, it doesn't work out that way. So usually when it comes to athletes that are not in my top 7, they are guaranteed 3 meets in the fall. I do take them to 3 meets, and usually one of them will be a bigger D1 meet so that they get to experience what it takes to be an NCAA athlete at the D1 level.
For sure.
If you are part of my top 7, usually you'll go ahead and compete at 6 meets, including regionals and nationals. Fast forward to the spring, I make a lot of decisions where we save a lot of money. For example, instead of taking charter buses, we rent vans. I get to have the luxury of driving to all these meets myself instead of just sitting back in the charter bus and whatnot. So by making those changes, I'm able to take everybody to every single track meet in the spring. So we get a lot of opportunity. They get a lot of opportunity to be out there and really show out how much they've worked hard throughout the year. And I think that's what really keeps us going. And there's no discouragement because athletes understand. I think we do a really good job letting them know and them understanding that, if you're not top 7 or if you're not close to being top 7, let's continue working the process and getting better. But it's just the opportunities of racing might not necessarily be there yet. And that's the biggest word that I use, right? Yet, because sophomores leave, I'm the next person up for next year. And I think we have a good culture when understanding that.
Yeah. No, I think it's important, right? Like to get them involved as much as possible. I don't know how many people you have on your team, but we try to be around 28 to 35, athletes, at least on for our program. So it can be one of those things where, that's a lot of people, that's a lot of hotel rooms, that's a lot of food, right? And so it does get expensive to take them everywhere. But at the same time, I do kind of the same way as you, we take them to as many events as possible. The really big events, the kind of the ones where because we don't really travel to any 2-year tournaments. We face 4-year schools everywhere we go outside of the duels and like the one-on-one stuff. But everywhere we go, there's normally going to be 4-year schools outside of nationals, of course, and national duels. But for the most part, 95% of the season it's against, or 90% roughly is about 4-year schools. So, but there are 2 or 3 events that are really considered some of the toughest tournaments in the country, because they get every level, D1, JUCO, everywhere, and a lot of times those tournaments are bringing in those ranges the top 2, top 3, top 5 teams in the entire country pound for pound. So we on those tournaments, kind of the same way how you do, we kind of just take pretty much the starters go to that tournament, right? And maybe if there's a competitive backup or whatever, we will maybe consider taking them. But, we can't take 35 girls to this tournament. This is going to be one where we're taking, 9, 10, 12, 11, 9, 10, 11, there we go, girls to that tournament, just because, for one, we want to go there and be competitive, and not everybody's going to be able to do that. 2, they're usually pretty far from us, so we have to be conscious of the price. But anyways, yeah, like it is a big thing, right? And so I can appreciate that you do that, because I don't know if every coach does that in terms of spending the effort to take them places, or financials. I think it's a big thing. Like you said, everybody's putting the same amount of work. It's just how it works right now, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yeah. Because if it was up to me, they would go to every single event because they've earned it. It's just, I feel like on our end, we're failing them because we can't afford for them to go to, places that they earn and deserve to, to go to. But again, I'm grateful. Sometimes. Yeah, and I'm grateful they get it. They get it. So
it's important that it's great that it sounds like you put in the time to let them understand before they get that no on their desk, essentially. It'd be kind of crappy to walk into work and say you're not going this weekend after expectations are to go, right? And so which kind of leads into the final few questions of philosophy, because we've talked a lot about the track or the cross country side of things, recruiting. So how do you build a successful culture on the level of mindset and buy-in?
Trust the process, right? Going ahead and implementing that culture of trusting the process from the beginning. I started from the recruiting pitch. When I'm talking to an athlete, with the hopes of them coming over, I tell them, I was like, if you do decide to come over, you have to come in with the idea that you have to trust the process and understand that we are here to make you better, not only as an athlete, but as a person, as a student. And it might be different than you're used to. It might even be ways that you might disagree with. But if you trust the process, and part of trusting the process is having that open communication with me as well. You know, if you do disagree with something, talk to me about it. Tell me the whys. Tell me the what would you do. Being able to bring in that culture of, again, trusting that process and being able to understand that if you're coming to CSN to be an athlete, a student athlete, we are going to do things the right way. And if you buy into that, everything else will fall into place.
Absolutely. Yeah. Trust the process. One of my favorite, that's literally one of my favorite things I say all year. Cause I get questions throughout the year. Why are we running in January outside for this random day? Like it's a random Wednesday. Why are we running when we haven't ran since October, like the distance that we do? And well, because just trust it. Just trust the process. And the people who buy into that usually find the most success. Just because they're bought in. You know, they're not afraid to ask questions, but they're not afraid to put in the work, whether it's in front of me or behind closed doors. They're putting in the work and they're trusting the process. So you're right. I love that. That's a huge thing. So, you know, on the other side of that though, when it comes to like the program, right? Like you guys have found success being nationally ranked. Top guys got all the way up to top 10, finished 17th, right? Both have been ranked in the past. Question is, on the program side, how do you build a successful program on the level of wins, or in your case, like consistently finishing and getting to the next level, right? You finished 17th. So now let's get the guys to 12th or 10th or whatever your next goal is, right? And the girls in the top 25. How do you get there? And then also, how do you sustain that? So how are you going to sustain and grow with the guys next year as well?
I mean, part of that obviously starts with if we could get some pretty good recruits coming into, to get that top level athlete in our program, right?
Absolutely.
But again, at the same time, I think one reason why we've been pretty successful throughout the last few years is because of the kind of family culture that we do bring in. So the fact that we look out for each other. We don't look out at what's out there or what we're trying to chase. I think we do a really good job supporting each other, being our brothers and sisters, being there for each other, and really dedicating to what we got going on in a workout today, or what our mental health is. Let's sit down and let's go out and have a team outing, because I could tell that, we just need to have fun for a little bit. The concentration on that kind of things results into what will happen in the results on the course. We really, we'll see what other schools are doing. We'll see the results and all that fun stuff. And we do come up with the what if scenarios. Well, if we can do this, then we might be here. But the bigger picture is we are more worried, or we are more concentrated on how we can make each other better and faster. And by doing that, I think continuing to improve at the national level will just fall in place. The cool thing that we have going on this upcoming year, so we've been at the NJCAA level, there's 3 divisions as well, right? 1, 2, 3. We've been Division 1 since we've started. We actually are being bumped down to Division 2 starting next year, just because the other programs that were in our region, Division 1, bumped down to Division 2. So our athletic administration was like, well, it makes no sense for us to be the only Division 1 program. Let's bump down to Division 2. So now we have some excitement where our program might actually see a huge jump at the national rankings, because, for example, at nationals last year, the time that we ran at nationals and finished 17th, we would have finished 4th at nationals last year. Right? Yeah. So with that being said, there's a lot of excitement going on now for next year's cross country season, but at the same time, it's not the conversation of we're going to be national champions, we're going to be, beat these teams now, we're going to be high in the rankings. The conversation has been, wow, if we do this, if we can get together and complete and accomplish this, then oh my God, it's going to be fun. And I think that mentality has really helped us be where we are right now. And that's the kind of mentality that, because when I talk to recruits, I have athletes with me too. So athletes are telling the recruits, this is our mentality and this is how we've become as successful as we are.
Absolutely.
Things will play. Yeah, things will play, put themselves into place. Let's just worry about what we need to do.
Yeah. We're actually a JUCO NJCAA D2 as well. So you'll be competing against you'll be competing against Carl Albert. That's the school I coach at. So you'll be that. But yeah, the idea that you said earlier, one of my favorite quotes is comparison is the thief of joy, and I've really had to become. Oh, you're good. I still see you. Oh, it's still wave. Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things, right? Like comparison's the thief of joy, and the fact that you guys kind of have that as a motto, essentially. Don't look at others. Don't look outside of what we're working here. I think goes a long way. So I love that that's something that you do, and your program does. So my final question in terms of philosophy, we'll finish up. I have like one fun question at the end of this that I kind of like to end with. It's a debate question, but we'll finish on the philosophy side. Is what is your coach's why? Why do you do this?
So that I can be a Raposo for others, honestly. Like, I love the fact that I have now been able to impact a lot of people in what they are to do. And obviously I have a passion for the sport. I love coaching. I love what I do. But I think the biggest benefit that I've gotten and the biggest reward that I've received is, I still talk to people from year one at CSN and they still keep me in their lives. And I think that's awesome. My assistant coach right now, she was my number one girl on my year one team, still holds the school record and whatnot. And here we are doing a 180. Now she is on the coaching staff and still part of my life as I am part of hers. I just love being that impact and that positive impact for our student athletes, where also they've impacted me so much, where even in the 5 years that I've been at CSN, I am a different person in my opinion, for the better, because of the experiences and the impact that my athletes have given me. So, the best way to describe it is, with what Ryan Raposo did to me, like my why is I would love to be the Ryan Raposo for my athletes.
I was about to say, sounds a lot like what your high school coach Raposo did for you. He brought you back, and he was an influential factor to you as a young coach, and now it sounds like you're doing the same thing for your assistant right now. Obviously, there's a lot more comparisons and similarities there, but just off the level of, sounds like you want to build that coaching tree and give people opportunities, not only as an athlete, but people who want to grow in that regard too. So I love that. Hell yeah, that's really good. I love that. Well, if you guys are still listening to this episode, if you guys are on YouTube, make sure you guys like, subscribe, all the 9 yards. If you guys are an audio listener, PocketCasts, Spotify, whatever it is, make sure you guys leave a review, leave a comment, say what you got to say, but say it with your chest, because Coach and I want to hear it. Coach, I got one final question for you to kind of finish here, and we kind of touched on it earlier. I know exactly. You may or may not have an idea of what this is. You may have heard this if you've listened to any other shows, but this is the debate question, and it is a relatively hot one. There's some beef, I guarantee, in this track and field world and maybe distance. I'm going to ask you both because I know right now you are a distance coach, so I'm going to ask you that one, but you've also been involved in track. So I'm going to ask you this question. What state produces the best high school cross country, but also what state produces the best track and field? Sprints, throws, things like that.
Man, I'm going to stick with home, right? I think Florida is that state where if you are a top athlete in Florida, you're going to beat pretty much anyone else in the country.
Okay.
Where
Okay.
I've been blessed to be part of some great athletes and see some great runners while I was a high school athlete and as a coach in Florida, and that's something that I just don't know if a lot of states can come close to what we were able to see in Florida. When it comes to distance, honestly, like just real quick, I think the depth of Utah. Utah has some dogs in that state, and they might not have the fastest runners in the country per se, like top heavy. But the depth that comes out of Utah is one of those that is really hard to beat. And it's always a fun experience when we know that we have to compete against some Utah schools, because we know that we're gonna have to work to even be close to these Utah kids. So I love those Utah distance runners, and I think they do a really good job in that state.
Okay. So Utah for distance.
And Florida.
And Florida. Hear me out, Texas. Florida's that go-to state.
Hey, you know what? I'm not going to sit here and debate that. I will say I spent some time living in Texas, so I got to experience. I didn't go to a track meet while I was. I'm not going to lie to you, but while living there, you obviously hear a lot, especially just being involved in watching high school sports and stuff. I don't know who's better, but people say Florida's better at football, but Florida's better at running. People say Texas. People say this, right? And this is not only on this show debate, but kind of a national debate. And so I'm not here to argue which one's better, who's not, but I will respect your answer there, especially since you're from there. There's going to be a little bit of bias in general from that too.
Yeah, and the experience. I got to see Frank Gore run, right? Like I got to see, when it comes to Frank Gore, I got lucky enough that he was a neighbor for me when I was living in Miami. So I got to see him through Coral Gables High School to the University of Miami, and then when he got drafted. A lot of football players now in the NFL are track athletes that I saw as an athlete myself back then. So it's, like I said, it is a bias because I was able to live through this era and through what Florida athletics provided. But it is absolutely no shade to Texas, because those Texas athletes are dogs as well, and there's some great athletes that come out of Texas.
Sorry, Callie, you're not in the conversation. Sorry, Callie. No, I can respect it. I don't mean it in a bad way, of course. I just like the idea that, like, if a coach listens to the end of this, right? I like to have the idea that everybody has their opinions. I hear things about different states all the time, and so it's cool to hear different perspectives and whys. And so I love that. I love that regardless of your biasness, which is it's a fair bias though. That's the difference, right? If you were like, I live in Massachusetts and we produce the best track and field athletes, like that's definitely bias, I think.
Yeah.
Nothing against any of you Massachusetts listeners and athletes, but it would just be bias, right? And so it's a respected bias because it is like I said, it is a top few state. But anyways, Coach, I really appreciate you jumping on here today, man. I know it went a little bit longer than I told you, but it was a great conversation. I really appreciate it. And at the end of it all, I thank you for taking your time to talk to me today. So thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate you. This was awesome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. I would love to have you back on here if there's ever an opportunity for that. Kind of see your progress and see how things go. So we'll definitely stay in the loop, and we'll stay in the loop and have those conversations when time comes. But thank you guys again for watching, for listening, whatever it may be. But as always, we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.